They called him Fat Ike, the quiet blacksmith who never raised his voice and never fought back. To the townsmen of Redemption Creek, Isaac Tull was harmless, slow, easy to scare. But the night they burned a cross by his forge, they woke a ghost they didn't understand. Because once, under another name, he was Sergeant Isaiah Tull, Union sharpshooter, the man soldiers called Deadeye. He'd buried that part of himself after the war, built a life, a home, a peace that cost him his sleep. But when the hoods rode again, and the hate returned on horseback, Isaac decided some battles don't end when the guns go silent. By dawn, the hunters would learn what kind of man they had cornered, and that the quiet ones aren't always the weakest. Because the clan came to hang a blacksmith, but what they found waiting in the dark was a soldier who never forgot how to kill. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The first rays of dawn broke over the Mississippi horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty road leading to Redemption Creek. Isaac Tull stood in his forge, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up to reveal thick forearms as he worked the bellows. The fire roared to life, sending sparks dancing toward the soot-blackened ceiling. Isaac was a large man. His broad shoulders and heavy frame gave him the appearance of slow movement, but his hands worked with surprising grace as he pulled a glowing horseshoe from the flames. The metal hissed when he plunged it into a water barrel, steam rising around his face like morning mist. The rhythmic clang of his hammer filled the air as he shaped the metal. Each strike rang out across the valley, a steady beat that marked the start of another day. Isaac liked this time of morning, before the town fully woke, before the stares and whispers began. "Morning, Isaac," called Martha, appearing in the doorway. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied back neatly with a ribbon. In her hands, she clutched a small book and slate. Isaac nodded, his hammer pausing mid-strike. "Morning. Don't forget," Martha reminded him, her voice gentle but firm. "Supper at 6. We're having the new students over." Isaac's face softened. "I'll be there." Martha stepped closer, touching his arm. Her eyes searched his face, finding the worry he tried to hide. "The children need to see a man like you. Strong, respectable. It matters, Isaac." He nodded again, watching as she walked down the path toward the small wooden building that served as the freedmen's school. Pride and fear twisted inside him as he watched her go. His Martha, so brave, teaching children who'd never been allowed to learn before. Isaac returned to his work, losing himself in the familiar motions, until voices outside pulled him back to the present. "Hey there, Fat Ike!" The mocking call came from 3 white men lounging against the fence. "You gonna work all day, or take a nap soon?" Isaac kept hammering, his face a mask. The men laughed, emboldened by his silence. "My horse needs shoeing," one called. "But I'm afraid you might eat him." More laughter. Isaac had heard worse. He'd endured worse. His hammer rose and fell, struck and rose again. The sound of horses approaching scattered the men. A party of riders appeared, led by Ezekiel Ward. The ex-Confederate captain sat tall in his saddle, his gray coat immaculate, his beard neatly trimmed. Power clung to him like cologne. "Tull," Ward said, not bothering to dismount. His voice carried the casual authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Heard your wife's school is getting more students." Isaac looked up, meeting Ward's eyes. "Yes, sir." Ward's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mighty generous of the government to educate. Everyone these days." He looked Isaac up and down, even those who might not have the capacity for book learning. Isaac said nothing. His fingers tightened around the hammer. "Well," Ward continued, "education is important. Teaches people their proper place." He tipped his hat. "Good day, Tull." The riders moved on, dust settling in their wake. Isaac returned to his work, the hammer striking harder now, each blow carrying the weight of words unsaid. Evening shadows stretched long across the wooden table where Isaac and Martha sat for supper. A simple meal of cornbread and stew lay between them. Martha's face was drawn, her usual energy dimmed. "They wrote things on the schoolhouse door again," she said quietly. "Terrible things. And someone left a pile of wood against the back wall." "For burning?" Isaac asked, his voice low. Martha nodded. Reverend Pike saw it and had it removed, but the children were frightened. Isaac pushed his bowl away, appetite gone. "Maybe we should—" "We're not running, Isaac," Martha cut in. "This is our home now, our life." She reached for his hand. "The war is over." A knock at the door interrupted them. Reverend Amos Pike stood on their porch, hat in hand, his thin face etched with worry. "Evening, Reverend," Martha said. "Would you like some supper?" "No, thank you, Martha." Pike stepped inside, nodding to Isaac. "I came to have a word about the school and other matters." Isaac gestured to a chair. The Reverend sat, his fingers fidgeting with his hat brim. "There's talk in town," Pike began. "Bad talk. About the school. About you folks." He glanced at Isaac. "Particularly about you, Isaac." "What kind of talk?" Martha asked. Pike lowered his voice. "Ward and his friends don't like a man of your stature owning property, doing well for himself." He leaned forward. "They think you're forgetting your place." "My place?" Isaac's voice was soft, but carried an edge. "I'm just telling you what I heard," Pike said quickly. "I'm trying to help. The best thing might be to stay humble, keep your head down, let things cool off." "We've done nothing wrong," Martha protested. "Of course not," Pike agreed. "But these are difficult times. Changes coming too fast for some folk." Isaac stared at the dying coals in the fireplace, saying nothing. The Reverend's words hung in the air like smoke. "Just be careful," Pike said, rising to leave. "Both of you." After the Reverend left, Isaac sat in silence, watching the last embers fade to gray. The day's final customers gone, Isaac closed his shop as dusk settled over Redemption Creek. He walked slowly along the path to the riverbank, his heavy frame moving with the deliberate pace that had earned him mockery. At the water's edge, Isaac stopped. The river flowed dark and steady before him, reflecting the rising moon. He stared down at his face in the water, distorted by gentle ripples. The moonlight caught the raised line of an old scar that ran across his neck, pale against his dark skin. Isaac touched it, remembering the sound of distant cannon fire, the smell of gunpowder, the weight of a rifle in his hands. Some memories never faded, no matter how deeply buried. Some wars never truly ended. The next evening settled over Redemption Creek like a shroud. Martha had just finished washing the supper dishes when the barking began. First one dog, then another, until the whole town seemed to echo with their alarm. Isaac looked up from his chair by the fireplace. Something's got them riled. Martha wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the window. Her sharp intake of breath made Isaac rise. "Isaac," she whispered, "come look." On the hill that overlooked the freedmen's schoolhouse, flames licked the night sky. A cross, 10 feet tall, burned against the darkness, its fiery arms reaching toward heaven in a mockery of salvation. Isaac's face hardened as he stared at the blazing symbol. Without a word, he took his coat from its hook and moved toward the door. "Where are you going?" Martha asked, her voice tight with fear. "To make sure the school is safe. You can't go out there. They might be watching, waiting." "I'm just going to check on the school," Isaac said, his voice calm but firm. "I'll be back soon." The night air was cool against his face as Isaac made his way through the shadows. He kept to the trees, moving quietly despite his size. The burning cross cast its unholy light across the town, shadows dancing like demons on the road. The schoolhouse stood dark and silent. Isaac circled it twice, checking windows, testing the door. It remained untouched, but his relief was short-lived. As he turned toward home, a flicker of movement caught his eye. 3 figures in the distance, slipping away from his forge. Isaac quickened his pace, a cold knot forming in his stomach. When he reached the blacksmith shop, the message awaited him, painted in crude white letters across the wooden door. Leave or burn. He stood there, his breath making small clouds in the night air. Behind him, the cross continued to burn on the hillside, a promise written in flame. Morning came with false brightness, sunlight gilding the edges of clouds. Isaac stood outside his forge, scrubbing at the white letters that defaced his door. The lye soap burned his hands, but he barely noticed. Townsfolk passed on their way to work or market. Some crossed to the other side of the street. Others hurried by with downcast eyes. No one stopped. No one spoke. Shame about your door, Tull. Isaac turned to find Deputy Harris standing behind him, thumbs hooked in his belt loops. The deputy was a wiry man with nervous eyes that never quite met yours straight on. Shame about that cross, too, Isaac replied evenly, returning to his scrubbing. Harris cleared his throat. Now, I'll look into this, of course. But between you and me, he lowered his voice to a confidential whisper, might be best if you just lay low for a while. Things are tense. Tense, Isaac repeated. Some folks don't like change, Harris said, shrugging as if this explained everything. Nothing personal. Just the way things are. Isaac straightened, towering over the deputy. Someone threatened my property and my wife's school. Seems personal to me. Harris took a step back, his hand drifting toward his pistol. Now, don't go getting all worked up. That'll just make things worse. His voice hardened. Much worse. Is that a warning, deputy? Just friendly advice. Harris touched the brim of his hat. You have yourself a good day now. Isaac watched him walk away, noting how the deputy headed straight for Ward's office at the end of town. No coincidence there. By midday, Isaac had scrubbed away most of the white letters, though their ghostly outline remained, a scar on the weathered wood. Inside, the forge felt cold despite the fire. Isaac worked mechanically, his mind elsewhere as he shaped metal with steady blows. Martha appeared at noon, her face lined with worry. Everyone's talking about it, she said. The school board wants to close the school for safety. They can't do that, Isaac said, though they both knew it wasn't true. The white school board could do whatever it pleased. Isaac! Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. We could leave, go north to Chicago. My cousin wrote that they need teachers there, and surely they need blacksmiths too. Isaac set down his hammer, wiping his hands on his apron. This is our home, Martha. We built this place with our own hands. A home isn't worth dying for. Martha's eyes filled with tears. They killed the Jenkins family last year, burned them out, and the Wilsons before that. I know. Isaac took her hands in his. I know. That evening, after Martha had gone to bed, Isaac sat alone by the dying fire. The house creaked around him, settling into night. When he was certain Martha slept, he moved quietly to the small bedroom and knelt beside their bed. With careful hands, he pried up a loose floorboard beneath the bed frame. The space below was dark, but Isaac knew what it contained. He reached in and lifted out a wooden chest, the size of a large book. He carried it to the kitchen table and opened it by the light of a single candle. Inside lay folded blue cloth, a uniform jacket, faded but still carrying the insignia of the Union Army. Beside it rested an oiled cloth bundle that Isaac unwrapped with reverent hands. The Springfield rifle gleamed in the candlelight, its stock polished smooth by years of handling. Isaac ran his fingers along the barrel, checking for rust, finding none. At the bottom of the chest lay a small wooden stick, no longer than his middle finger, notched all along its length. Carved into one end were the words, Agent I. Tull, Deadeye. Isaac held the tally stick up to the light, counting the notches. 73. 73 men who had died by his hand. 73 souls he had sent to judgment, with the squeeze of a trigger. The weight of it pressed down on him like stone. Martha woke to emptiness beside her. The bed where Isaac should be was cold. She rose, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the chill, and padded barefoot through the quiet house. She found him sitting at the kitchen table, the rifle across his knees. In the gray light before dawn, his face looked carved from stone. "Thomas Johnson," Isaac whispered, not looking up. "William Parker, John Freeman, Samuel Dixon." Names. He was reciting names. Martha sat beside him, saying nothing. "They died beside me," Isaac continued, "fighting for freedom, for a chance to live as men, not property." His fingers tightened around the rifle. "I promised them it wouldn't be for nothing." Martha reached out, laying her hand over his. She knew then that he had made his choice. Whatever came next, there would be no running, no hiding. The war that had never truly ended for Isaac was about to begin again. 2 nights later, a bone-white moon hung above Redemption Creek. Thick fog rolled in from the river, cloaking the town in ghostly shrouds that muffled sound and blurred shapes. The mist caught in Isaac's throat as he stood at his forge window, peering into the darkness. "Something's coming," he said quietly. Martha looked up from her mending. "How can you tell?" "Listen." At first, there was only silence. Then, faintly, the sound reached them. Hoofbeats growing louder. Many horses moving together, a rolling thunder in the night. "Get your shawl," Isaac said, his voice calm but urgent. "They're coming for the forge." Martha set down her sewing and moved quickly, gathering only what was precious, a small photograph, her mother's Bible. Isaac lifted the floorboard and pulled out his ammunition, loading the Springfield with steady hands. "When they come, you'll go to the root cellar," he told her. "The door's hidden behind the woodpile. Don't come out until I call for you." "And what will you do?" Martha asked, though she already knew. "What I have to." The hoofbeats grew louder, punctuated now by men's voices and the crackling of torches. Through the fog, flames appeared like evil spirits, bobbing and weaving as riders emerged from the mist. White hoods, white robes. The clan had come to Redemption Creek. Isaac counted at least 15 riders, their torches held high as they circled the forge. Their horses stamped and snorted, uneasy in the thick fog. "Martha, go now." She clutched his arm. "Don't get yourself killed." "I don't plan to." He kissed her quickly. "Go." When she had disappeared behind the woodpile, Isaac took a deep breath and stepped outside. Empty-handed, he stood on his porch, facing the circle of torches and hatred. One rider urged his horse forward. Though his face was hidden behind a white hood, Isaac knew the voice instantly. "Well, well," said Ezekiel Ward. "If it ain't Fat Ike himself." He stretched the words out like taffy. "Come out to greet his betters." "Evening, gentlemen," Isaac said, his voice carrying across the yard. "Seems you're lost. Town's that way." He pointed down the road. Laughter rippled through the riders. Ward tilted his hooded head. "Ain't lost at all. We're exactly where we mean to be." Ward's voice hardened. "This here land is for white men. We warned you once. Tonight, we're going to make sure you understand." "I understand just fine," Isaac replied. "You're scared." The laughter died. Ward's horse shifted beneath him. "You watch your mouth, boy," another rider called, "or we'll shut it permanent." Ward raised a gloved hand for silence. "Last chance, Ike. Pack up and leave by sunrise, or we burn this place to the ground." He gestured to the other riders. "Boys, show him we mean business." 2 riders dismounted, carrying torches toward the forge. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Isaac said, still unnaturally calm. "And why's that?" Ward asked, amusement in his voice. "Because I asked nicely." The men hesitated, looking back at Ward. He made an impatient gesture. "Burn it!" Isaac stepped back into the doorway of his forge. "Last warning." The men approached, torches held high. Isaac disappeared inside. "Coward!" someone yelled. "Look at him run!" The first torch touched the wooden wall of the forge. Flame licked at the timber. The explosion that followed lit up the night like lightning. A hidden charge of gunpowder, carefully placed beneath the outer wall, erupted in fire and smoke. The blast wasn't deadly. Isaac had measured it precisely, but it threw the men backward, their torches flying from their hands. Horses reared in panic. Riders struggled to control their mounts as smoke and sparks filled the air. Through the chaos, Isaac emerged from the forge, a bucket of water in hand. Calmly, methodically, he doused the small fire that had started on the wall. "Next one won't be a warning," he called out to the scattered riders. "Next one takes heads." Ward's horse danced sideways, the animal's eyes rolling in fear. "You're a dead man, Tull," he shouted, his voice raw with fury. "You hear me? A dead man." Isaac said nothing, standing like a statue as the fog swirled around him. One by one, the riders regrouped, pulling their spooked horses into line. Ward pointed at Isaac, a final threat in the gesture, before turning his mount. The clan thundered away into the fog, torches bobbing like retreating fireflies. Only when the last hoofbeat had faded did Isaac allow his shoulders to drop. He walked to the woodpile. "Martha, it's safe now." She emerged from the hidden door, dust in her hair. "Are they gone?" "For now." "Thank God." She looked at the scorched wall of the forge. "They'll be back." "Yes," Isaac said, "but they'll be afraid next time." By dawn, the story had spread through Redemption Creek. The tale grew with each telling. Fat Ike had fought off 20 clansmen single-handed. He'd built a cannon. He'd called down lightning from heaven. White townsfolk eyed Isaac warily as he walked to his forge. Black neighbors nodded in silent respect. No one approached him directly, but he felt their stares like physical things. Inside the forge, Isaac began his work. Not horseshoes or hinges today, but reinforcements. He hammered iron bars for the windows, forged heavy brackets for the doors. By midday, his forge resembled a fortress more than a blacksmith's shop. When no customers came, he used the time to clean his rifle. Each part received careful attention. The barrel scrubbed with patches, the action oiled, the firing pin inspected. He worked with the precision of a man who knew his life might depend on this weapon. Martha brought him lunch, watching his methodical preparations with worried eyes. "The whole town's talking," she said. Deputy Harris was asking questions at the general store. "Let him ask." Isaac sighted down the spotless barrel. "They got their warning." "And if they don't heed it?" Martha asked softly. Isaac lowered the rifle. "Then they'll learn what happens to men who hunt what they don't understand." Night fell again over Redemption Creek. Isaac sat outside his reinforced forge, the Springfield across his knees. The moon cast blue shadows across the yard as he oiled the rifle one final time, his movements as familiar as breathing. "They think they're hunting a man," he murmured to the waiting darkness, his voice barely audible above the night sounds. "They're wrong." Morning light filtered through the thinning fog as Isaac stepped outside his forge. Wisps of smoke still curled from the scorched wall where the clan's torches had briefly caught before he extinguished the flames. The smell of burned wood hung in the air, a reminder of how close they'd come. Martha joined him, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders against the morning chill. "We need supplies," she said. "Flour, salt, ammunition, if they have it." Isaac nodded. "I'll ride into town." He glanced at the blackened timber. "Need more tar for the roof, too." "Be careful." Martha touched his arm. "They'll be watching you now." "Let them watch." Isaac's voice was steady. "I've been watched before." He saddled the old brown mare he kept for deliveries and loaded his satchel with coins earned from last week's work. The Springfield stayed behind, hidden beneath the floorboard, but Isaac tucked a small pistol into his belt, covering it with his jacket. The road into Redemption Creek curved alongside the river, offering glimpses of water between the trees. Few travelers passed Isaac as he rode, but those who did gave him a wide berth, eyes darting nervously toward him before hurrying on. The explosion at his forge had changed how they saw him. No longer just Fat Ike, but something unpredictable, dangerous. The town's main street was busy with morning commerce when Isaac arrived. He tied his horse at the hitching post outside Mackey's general store, feeling the weight of stairs as he climbed the wooden steps to the porch. Conversation died when he pushed open the door, the bell's cheerful jingle stark against the sudden silence. "Morning," Isaac said, nodding to Mr. Mackey behind the counter. The storekeeper gave a tight smile. "Morning, Isaac. What can I get you?" Isaac handed over his list. "Just the basics today." While Mackey gathered his supplies, Isaac moved to the window, watching the street outside. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. A broad-shouldered man with gray starting to thread through his close-cropped hair, lines etching the corners of his eyes. But for a moment, the reflection changed. The glass showed not Redemption Creek, but a muddy trench outside Petersburg, Virginia. The sky filled with smoke, the air with the whistle of shells. Isaac blinked, but the memory held him. April 1865. The siege had stretched for months. Sergeant Isaiah Tull lay belly down in the wet earth, the Springfield tucked against his shoulder. Through his scope, he watched Confederate positions 300 yards distant. "Range, Deadeye?" asked the spotter beside him. 300. Wind from the west." His voice was different then, harder, colder. A figure in gray appeared in his sights, an officer giving orders. Isaac's finger tightened on the trigger. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. Through the scope, he watched the officer crumple. "Confirmed kill," whispered the spotter. "That's 73. Isaac didn't reply, already searching for the next target. "Isaac, your supplies are ready." Mackey's voice pulled him back to the present. Isaac blinked, the battlefield fading from view, replaced by the familiar sight of the general store. He turned from the window, reaching for his coins. "You all right?" Mackey asked, eyeing him carefully. "Fine," Isaac said shortly. "Just thinking." He paid for his supplies and loaded them onto his horse. As he finished, a hand touched his shoulder. Isaac turned sharply, instinct making his hand move toward the hidden pistol. Reverend Amos Pike stepped back quickly, hands raised. "Easy, Isaac. Just me." Isaac relaxed slightly. "Reverend, could I have a word?" Pike glanced nervously up and down the street. "Somewhere private." They walked to the small churchyard, where tall oaks provided shade and privacy. Pike wrung his hands, his pale face twitching with anxiety. "I heard what happened at your place," the preacher said. "Ward's boys are saying you tried to kill them." "They tried to burn my home," Isaac replied evenly. "I discouraged them. They're planning something worse." Pike's voice dropped to a whisper. "I overheard Ward and Deputy Harris at the barber shop. They're not just coming for you next time. They're talking about the school, about making examples." Isaac's jaw tightened. "When?" "Soon. Maybe tonight. Maybe tomorrow." Pike looked down. "You need to warn the others, the freedmen. Get the children somewhere safe." "Will you help?" Isaac asked, studying the preacher's face. Pike's eyes darted away. I want to, but if they knew I told you." "You have a duty, Reverend, to God, if not to men." "I know." Shame colored Pike's features. "I'll pray for you all." "Prayer without action is just words," Isaac said, turning away. "Warn the freedmen, Reverend, before it's too late." He mounted his horse, leaving Pike standing beneath the oaks. As he rode out of town, Isaac didn't see Deputy Harris watching from the sheriff's office window, didn't see Pike hurry across the street toward the lawman's door. By the time Isaac returned to the forge, the sun had passed its peak. Martha met him at the door, taking the supplies from his arms. "You were gone a long time," she said, searching his face. "Had news from the Reverend." Isaac closed the door behind them. "Ward's planning something bigger. Not just us. The school, too." Martha's hand went to her throat. "The children. We need to get them out. Isaac spread a rough map of the town on the table. Show me where they all live. As darkness fell, they worked by lamplight, marking routes and safe houses, planning how to evacuate the dozen children who attended Martha's school. They would need to move quietly, under cover of darkness, away from the main roads where the clan might ride. We'll take them to the old Miller cabin by the creek, Martha said, pointing to a spot on the map. It's abandoned since the war, but the roof's still good. Isaac nodded. I'll bring supplies tomorrow, blankets, food. And your rifle? Martha asked softly. Isaac met her gaze. Yes. They worked late into the night, the single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. Finally, Martha rubbed her tired eyes. We should rest, she said. Tomorrow will be long. Isaac blew out the lamp, plunging the forge into darkness. They moved toward the small bedroom at the back, unaware of the figure standing in the trees beyond their yard. Under the cover of night, the watcher remained motionless, the white hood of his robe barely visible in the darkness. He noted the extinguished light, the time it had remained lit, the preparations being made inside. Then, silent as a ghost, he slipped away toward town, where Ezekiel Ward waited for news. Dawn broke over Redemption Creek with a suffocating heat. The air hung thick and still, promising a day of crushing humidity. Isaac stood in the doorway of the forge, watching beads of sweat form on his forearm before he'd even begun the day's work. Weather like this made his old war wounds ache, a constant reminder of battles he couldn't forget. Martha sat at their small table, sorting through worn lesson books. Her fingers traced the edges of torn pages, carefully mending a split binding with thread. These have seen better days, she said, not looking up. The children deserve new books. Someday, Isaac replied. He watched her work, admiring the patience in her hands. Martha had been teaching herself to read since before the war ended, practicing by lamplight after long days in the fields. Now she passed that knowledge to others, despite the danger. Will you check on the school today? He asked. Martha nodded. I need to make sure everything's ready, for whatever comes. After breakfast, Isaac carried his Springfield rifle behind the forge, where a stand of trees shielded him from view of the road. He set up 3 bottles on a fence post 50 yards away, a short distance for a man who once made kills at 5 times that range. He settled into position, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon against his shoulder. His breathing slowed as he peered through the iron sights, aligning them with the first bottle. The rifle bucked against him as he fired, the bottle shattering into glittering fragments. 2 more shots, 2 more broken bottles. His aim remained true. Isaac was cleaning the rifle when he heard hoofbeats approaching. He quickly wrapped the weapon in an oilcloth and tucked it beneath a stack of lumber before stepping around to the front of the forge. Reverend Pike sat nervously on a spotted gray mare, his collar damp with sweat despite the early hour. His hands trembled on the reins. "Morning, Reverend," Isaac called. Pike dismounted awkwardly, tying his horse to a post. "Isaac," he said, voice higher than usual. "I came to see how you and Martha are faring after the other night." "We're standing," Isaac replied, studying the preacher's face. Something wasn't right. Pike's eyes darted around the yard, never settling on Isaac for more than a moment. "Good, good." Pike wiped his brow with a handkerchief. "I've been praying for your safety." "And the warning you mentioned? About the school?" Pike's face flushed. "Yes, well, perhaps I misunderstood what I heard. Maybe they were just talking, not actually planning." Isaac stepped closer. "Yesterday you seemed certain." "People say many things in anger," Pike stammered. "Not all threats are carried out." Martha appeared in the doorway, her expression hardening when she saw the Reverend. "We're moving the children tonight," she said flatly. "With or without your help." Pike's shoulders slumped. "I should go," he mumbled. "Sunday sermon to prepare." As the Reverend mounted his horse, Isaac caught a glimpse of something in his eyes. Not just fear, but guilt. Pike rode away without looking back, hunched in his saddle like a man carrying a heavy burden. "He's hiding something," Martha said when he was gone. Isaac nodded. "Or running from something." By midday, the heat had become oppressive. Isaac worked without his shirt, sweat streaming down his back, as he repaired a broken plow for one of the freedmen. Martha had gone to the school to prepare for the evacuation. When she returned 2 hours later, her face was grim. "Deputy Harris was at the schoolhouse," she said, accepting a dipper of water from Isaac, asking about our plans for the week, when classes would be held. Then I saw him riding toward Ward's plantation. Isaac set down his hammer. "So that's how they knew about the powder charge." Pike told Harris, and Harris told Ward. "We've been betrayed," Martha said simply. "Then we move now, not tonight." Isaac grabbed his jacket. "How many children at school today?" 8. "The Collins boys didn't come. Their father took them fishing." "Get them ready. I'll bring the wagon around back. We'll take the old logging road behind the creek." While Martha gathered the children, Isaac hitched the wagon and loaded it with blankets, food, and the Springfield, wrapped in canvas. They met behind the schoolhouse, the children wide-eyed but quiet, sensing the urgency. "We're going on an adventure," Martha told them with forced cheer. "Across the river, to a special place." They took the back roads, avoiding the main paths where they might be seen. Isaac kept his hand near the rifle as they traveled, eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. The abandoned Miller barn came into view as they crested a small hill, weathered but solid, hidden by a stand of willows near the creek bend. "It'll do," Isaac said as he helped Martha and the children down from the wagon. The inside of the barn was dusty but dry. Isaac swept the floor while Martha organized the children into helping unpack supplies. They worked quickly, setting up a makeshift classroom on one side and sleeping areas on the other. As evening approached, Isaac took Martha aside. "I need to go back," he said quietly. "Why?" Fear edged into her voice. "To set a trap," Isaac replied. "They'll come for the forge first, thinking we're there." "I want them to find something waiting." Martha gripped his arm. "Then what? You against all of them?" "Just need to buy time. The federal marshal in Oxford said he'd send men if there was trouble. Pike knows how to reach them." "You trust Pike, after today?" Isaac's face hardened. "I trust his conscience to catch up with him. Eventually." He kissed her forehead. "Keep the children quiet. I'll be back before dawn." The sun was setting when Isaac returned to the forge. Working quickly in the fading light, he positioned kerosene barrels at strategic points around the building, running lengths of fuse between them. He emptied the forge of anything valuable, loading tools and personal items into a small cart hidden in the trees. When he finished, Isaac climbed the small hill that overlooked both his property and the river beyond. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of Martha's lantern as she moved about the barn, settling the children for the night. Then the light disappeared as she drew a blanket over the window. Isaac chambered around in the Springfield and rested the rifle across his knees. The weight of it felt like an old friend returned, familiar but dangerous. "The forge will burn," he whispered to the coming night, "but not us." Midnight fell over Redemption Creek like a heavy curtain. A 3/4 moon cast silver light across the landscape, turning shadows into hiding places. Isaac settled into position at the edge of the tree line, 50 yards from his forge. From here, he could see all approaches to his property. His Springfield rifle rested against his shoulder, a weapon he'd hoped never to use against men again. The metal felt cool against his cheek as he steadied his breathing. Across the river, Martha and the children were safe in the old Miller barn. He'd watched her extinguish the lamp hours ago. She wouldn't return until morning. This fight was his alone. Isaac flexed his fingers, working out the stiffness. The humid air made his old wounds ache, particularly the scar that stretched across his neck. A Confederate bayonet had nearly taken his life at Petersburg. He'd survived that night. He intended to survive this one, too. The first sign came as a distant rumble of hoofbeats, growing louder with each passing minute. Isaac took a slow, deep breath, just as he'd done hundreds of times during the war. In the distance, torches flickered between the trees like angry fireflies. The clan rode toward his forge in formation, white hoods gleaming in the moonlight. Isaac counted 12 riders, with Ezekiel Ward at the lead. They approached slowly, confident in their numbers, unaware they were being watched. Ward raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. "Surround the property," he ordered, voice carrying in the still night air. "Harris, check the back door. The rest of you, spread out. I want the him alive when we burn this place." Deputy Harris dismounted, drawing his revolver as he crept toward the rear of the forge. The others spread out, forming a circle around the building. Isaac steadied his rifle, selecting his first target. A rider placing a torch against the side of his forge, near one of the hidden kerosene barrels. He exhaled slowly, then squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report shattered the night's silence. The rider crumpled to the ground, torch falling from his hand. Before the others could react, the fire reached the kerosene barrel. The explosion ripped through the night, a blinding flash followed by an eruption of flames that engulfed the side of the forge. Men screamed as burning debris rained down. Horses reared in panic, throwing 2 more riders. Isaac moved positions quickly, keeping to the shadows as he'd been taught in the war. He chambered another round, sighting on a clansman who had recovered enough to draw his pistol. "We're under fire!" someone shouted. "It's a trap!" another voice cried. Isaac's second shot found its mark, and another hooded figure fell. He melted back into the darkness, circling to a new position. Ward was shouting orders, trying to regain control. "Find him!" "He's alone!" The forge was fully ablaze now, flames leaping 30 feet into the air. The heat was intense, even from Isaac's position. Black smoke billowed upward, carried by the night breeze, providing additional cover. Isaac fired a third time, catching a clansman in the leg. The man's scream echoed across the property. The others were firing blindly now, bullets thudding into trees and whistling past Isaac's head. He moved again, this time positioning himself behind an old oak stump. From here, he had a clear shot at Deputy Harris, who was crouching behind a water trough, firing randomly into the darkness. Isaac lined up his sight, but before he could squeeze the trigger, something hot tore through his left shoulder. The impact spun him around, his rifle flying from his grasp. Pain exploded through his body as he fell to one knee. "Got him!" a voice shouted. "Over here!" Isaac tried to reach his rifle, but a boot kicked it away. He looked up to see Ward standing over him, pistol aimed at his head. "Not so tough now, are you?" Ward sneered. Deputy Harris rushed over, his face flushed with excitement. "Damn near shot my ear off," he panted. "Let me finish him, Ward." "No," Ward replied coolly. "We do this proper." A public lesson. He kicked Isaac hard in the wounded shoulder, sending fresh waves of agony through his body. Isaac fought to stay conscious as the 2 men beat him, their blows landing with dull thuds against his ribs and face. He tasted blood, felt a tooth loosen. The world spun around him, faces and flames blurring together. "Enough," Ward finally said. "Tie his hands." "We hang him at dawn." Harris produced a length of rope, binding Isaac's wrists tightly behind his back. The rough hemp bit into his skin, but the pain was distant now, secondary to the fire in his shoulder. "Get him in the wagon," Ward ordered, "and grab his rifle. I want every freedman to see what happens to those who fight back." They dragged Isaac across the yard, past his burning forge. The structure was collapsing in on itself. Years of work reduced to cinders in minutes. 2 bodies lay nearby, hood-covered faces turned toward the flames. Isaac was thrown roughly into a wagon bed, landing hard on his wounded shoulder. The impact nearly sent him into darkness, but he fought to stay conscious, counting his breaths, like he used to count targets. Someone tossed his Springfield rifle beside him. The weapon that had once made him famous among Union troops now lay there like a dead friend. The intricate carving on the stock caught the firelight. Deadeye, barely visible under smears of blood. Ward leaned over the wagon's edge, his face illuminated by the burning forge. "I want you to watch the sun rise tomorrow," he said, voice thick with hate. "It'll be the last thing you ever see." The wagon lurched forward, each bump sending fresh agony through Isaac's body. Above him, stars wheeled in the Mississippi sky, the same stars he'd used to navigate during the war. He tried to focus on them, tried to think of Martha and the children across the river. As consciousness slipped away, his fate sealed for morning, Isaac's last thought was of the day he'd promised never to kill again. A promise now broken with every body that lay on his land. Pre-dawn light crept through the cracks of an old tobacco barn, painting thin silver lines across Isaac's swollen face. He stirred, pain shooting through his shoulder as consciousness returned. His mouth tasted of copper and dirt. Slowly, his eyes adjusted to the gloom, revealing weathered walls and a dirt floor scattered with moldy hay. Isaac tested the ropes binding his wrists behind him. They were tight, professional knots that bit into his skin when he pulled. His ankles, too, were bound, secured to a support beam. Through gaps in the barn's wooden slats, he could make out shapes moving in the gray light. A soft whimper drew his attention to the far corner. Martha sat there, her wrists bound to a rusty plow. Her dress was torn at the sleeve, and dried blood stained her collar. Two men stood guard nearby, one sitting on an upturned bucket cleaning a revolver, the other leaning against the wall, occasionally taking swigs from a flask. "She's awake," the drinking guard said, nodding toward Martha. "Don't matter," replied the other, not looking up from his gun. "Ward says hang 'em both once folks gather. Make an example." Isaac strained against his bonds, earning only a fresh trickle of blood down his wrists. Martha's eyes found his across the barn, filled with fear, but also determination. She gave him the smallest of nods, the same signal they'd used during their escape from the plantation years ago. It meant, "I'm ready when you are." Through another crack in the wall, Isaac spotted Ezekiel Ward pacing outside, smoking a cigar. 6 men clustered around him, passing a bottle as they laughed. Behind them, an ancient oak tree loomed against the lightening sky, 2 ropes already dangling from a thick branch. Further back, half hidden in shadow, stood Reverend Pike. His hands wrung together as he watched the preparations, his face a mask of anguish. But he made no move to interfere, no gesture of protest, just stood there, paralyzed by his own fear. "Fetch the ladder," Ward called to someone outside Isaac's line of sight. "Harris, you ride into town. Tell everyone there's going to be a hanging. I want witnesses." Isaac watched as Deputy Harris mounted his horse, looking relieved to be leaving. "Sure thing, Ward. Should be back in an hour with half the town." "Cowards always flee before dawn," Isaac muttered to himself. Harris was abandoning Ward to do the dirty work, typical of the man. As Harris's horse galloped away, Isaac's eyes swept the barn floor, searching for anything useful. Near his left boot, half buried in dirt, he spotted it, a bent horseshoe nail, about 4 inches long. If he could just reach it! He shifted position, grimacing through the pain in his shoulder. The movement caught the attention of the drinking guard. "He's awake, too," the man said, walking over to Isaac. He crouched down, breath stinking of whiskey. "Not so tough now, are you? Deadeye, my ass!" He spat on the ground beside Isaac's face. Isaac said nothing, eyes downcast, appearing broken. When the guard returned to his post, Isaac stretched his leg as far as his bonds would allow, inching his boot toward the nail. His toe touched it, carefully dragging it closer until he could roll onto his side, fingers groping blindly. The nail was sharp enough. Working by feel alone, Isaac began sawing at his bindings, each small movement sending fire through his wounded shoulder. Time slowed to the pace of his careful cutting, measured by the gradually lightening sky outside. From beyond the barn walls came the sounds of men gathering, horses arriving. Ward's voice rose occasionally, giving instructions. More ropes. A platform. Preparations for a spectacle. At last, the rope around Isaac's wrists gave way. He kept his hands behind him, waiting for the right moment. When both guards turned to look out the door at some commotion outside, Isaac worked quickly to free his ankles. The drinking guard returned, flask empty, and kicked at Isaac's boot. "Almost time, Deadeye. Your wife gets to watch you swing first." Isaac kept his head down, hands still hidden. "Can I speak to her?" "Before it happens?" The guard laughed. "Ain't you sweet?" "Sure. Why not?" He grabbed Isaac's collar, hauling him upright, not noticing the freed hands. "Say your goodbyes." As the guard shoved him toward Martha, Isaac moved with the quickness that had kept him alive through 4 years of war. His arms snaked around the man's neck, the loose rope now becoming a garrote. The guard's eyes bulged as Isaac applied pressure to the sides of his neck, cutting off blood flow rather than air. A quicker unconsciousness. Within seconds, the man went limp. The second guard turned at the sound of his companion collapsing. Isaac was already moving, the nail clutched between his fingers. Before the man could shout, Isaac drove the nail deep into his throat, hand clamping over his mouth to muffle the gurgled scream. Both guards now lay still on the barn floor. Isaac rushed to Martha, using the nail to free her bonds. "Can you run?" he whispered, helping her to her feet. She nodded, rubbing life back into her wrists. "What's your plan?" "Get to the woods. When you hear gunfire, run east toward the river." He peered through a crack in the wall. "Pike's out there. Useless as always. Ward's got 4 men with him now." Isaac checked the guards' bodies, taking a knife from one and a revolver from the other. Then he spotted his Springfield rifle leaning against the wall near a saddlebag. He grabbed it, checking the action. "The children," Martha started. "Safe at the Miller barn," Isaac assured her. "Get to them when this is over." He led her to the back of the barn, where loose boards created a small gap. Outside, the sky was turning pink at the edges. Dawn was approaching. "Wait here until I create a distraction," he instructed, squeezing her hand. "Then run and don't look back." Martha touched his face, fingers gentle on his bruised skin. "Isaac!" "I know," he cut her off. "I know what I promised you, but some promises can't be kept when the devil comes calling." She nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Be careful." Isaac checked his weapons one last time, then peered out at the men preparing their grim work. The great oak tree stood ready, its branches waiting like skeletal arms against the reddening sky. Martha slipped through the gap in the wall as the first rays of sun broke over the distant hills. Isaac watched her disappear into the tree line before turning his attention to the task at hand. He wiped blood from his palms onto his pants, feeling a cold calm settle over him. The same deadly focus that had earned him his nickname. "Now it's my war again," he muttered, checking the load in his Springfield rifle. With steady steps, Isaac Tull, once known as Deadeye, walked toward the oak tree, where Ezekiel Ward and his remaining men waited, unaware that their prey had become the hunter. Early morning mist rolled across the meadow like a shroud, turning the oak tree into a looming specter. Its ancient branches reached toward the pale sky, 2 ropes swaying gently in the breeze. Beneath them, Ezekiel Ward paced with measured steps, checking his pocket watch every few minutes. His remaining 4 clansmen stood nearby, rifles resting against their shoulders. "Almost time, boys," Ward said, adjusting his vest. "Harris should be bringing the townsfolk soon." In the distance, figures began to emerge from the fog. Men, women, and even children summoned to witness the spectacle. They gathered at a safe distance, their faces solemn or fearful. Among them, Reverend Pike stood with his hat pulled low, trying to blend into the crowd. His hands trembled as he clutched his Bible to his chest. Ward smiled at the gathering. He climbed onto a wooden crate, raising his voice to carry across the field. "People of Redemption Creek, you come to witness justice today." His voice boomed with practiced authority. "Since the war's end, order has collapsed. The natural way of things has been upset. But today," he gestured dramatically toward the barn where Isaac and Martha were supposed to be held. "Today we restore the proper order. We show what happens when people forget their place in this world." A few in the crowd nodded. Others looked at their shoes. Most just stared, faces blank with the practiced emptiness of those who had seen too much violence to be moved by more. "Go fetch the prisoners," Ward ordered one of his men, who headed toward the barn. "This man," Ward continued, "this troublemaker who calls himself a blacksmith, raised his hand against white men. He dared to—" The crack of a rifle shot split the morning air. Ward's words died on his lips as the man he'd sent to the barn crumpled to the ground, a red stain blooming across his back. The crowd scattered like startled birds, some running, others dropping to the ground. "What the devil?" Ward began, drawing his pistol. Another shot rang out. A second Klansman fell, clutching his throat, making terrible gurgling sounds as he collapsed, face first, into the dirt. "Take cover!" Ward shouted, diving behind the oak tree. His two remaining men scrambled for protection, one behind a water trough, the other ducking behind their horses. From somewhere in the swirling mist, Isaac's voice echoed, impossible to pinpoint. "You came to hang me? Now you'll hang yourselves." The man behind the water trough raised his rifle, scanning desperately. "Where is he? I don't see—" A third shot, and he pitched backward, a neat hole between his eyes. The last Klansman panicked, firing wildly into the fog. "Ward, he's picking us off. We need to—" His words ended in a scream as a bullet shattered his knee. He fell, writhing in pain. Ward pressed his back against the oak, pistol clutched in both hands. The fog seemed to thicken around him, hiding everything beyond 10 paces. "Show yourself, coward," he shouted, voice cracking. "Fight like a man." A shadow moved through the mist, there, then gone. Ward fired at it, the shot echoing uselessly. "I am fighting like a man." Isaac's voice came from a different direction now. "Like the man who watched you burn homes and schools. Like the man who fought to free people you want to keep in chains." The wounded Klansman's screams turned to whimpers, then silence. Ward risked a glance around the tree and saw the man being dragged into the fog by an unseen force. Minutes passed in terrible silence. Ward's breathing came in ragged gasps. He had one bullet left. Then, like a nightmare taking shape, the fog parted briefly. Ward saw his men, all 4 of them, hanging from the branches of nearby trees, ropes tight around their necks, faces purple and swollen. Their white hoods had been placed back on their heads, a mockery of their clan regalia. "Dear God," Ward whispered. In the distance, the remaining townsfolk watched in horror. Reverend Pike fell to his knees, praying fervently, tears streaming down his face. "They're your ropes," Isaac's voice came again, closer now. "Your justice." Ward spun, firing his last shot blindly into the mist. The bullet thudded into a tree trunk. "You're nothing but a killer," Ward shouted, desperation in his voice. "A savage." "I'm what you made me," Isaac replied calmly. "What men like you created, when you wouldn't let the war end." The mist began to lift as the rising sun burned through the morning air. Shafts of golden light pierced the fog, illuminating the grim scene. The hanging bodies of the Klansmen swaying gently from trees surrounding the great oak. Ward stood alone now, his back still against the trunk, empty pistol in hand. He reached for the knife in his boot. As the last of the fog dissipated, Isaac Tull stepped into view. His clothes were stained with blood, some his own, some not. The Springfield rifle rested comfortably in his hands, aimed directly at Ward's chest. His face showed no anger, no triumph, only the steady resolve of a man finishing a job. "It's over, Ward," Isaac said quietly. Ward's fingers closed around his knife handle. "It's never over." In one desperate motion, Ward drew the blade and lunged forward. Isaac's rifle cracked one final time. The bullet caught Ward squarely in the chest, lifting him off his feet. He landed hard, sprawled at the base of the oak, blood pooling beneath him. His eyes stared upward at his dead men hanging above, his mouth open in a silent scream. The sun broke fully through the clouds now, bathing the meadow in morning light. Isaac lowered his rifle, looking not at Ward's body, but at the distant hills where Martha would be waiting with the children. Reverend Pike knelt in the dirt, his Bible clutched to his chest, shoulders heaving with sobs. The morning sun now fully lit the grim scene. The bodies of Ward and his men, the oak tree standing like a silent witness. The townspeople had scattered, racing back to their homes to bolt their doors against the horror they'd witnessed. Isaac lowered his rifle slowly, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Blood seeped through his shirt where the bullet had grazed his shoulder. The rage that had fueled him through the night drained away, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion. Movement caught his eye at the tree line. Martha emerged from the trees, running across the meadow toward him. Her dress was torn, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes were clear and fixed on him. "Isaac!" she called, voice breaking with relief. He turned toward her, the rifle hanging loose in his grip. For a moment, he feared she would look at him differently now that she'd seen what he was capable of. But when she reached him, her arms went around him without hesitation, pressing her face against his chest. "You're alive?" she whispered. "Thank God, you're alive." Isaac's free arm encircled her, drawing her close. Over her shoulder, he watched Reverend Pike stumble to his feet, the man's face etched with shame and horror. "I never meant," Pike began, his voice breaking. "I never thought they would." "You knew," Isaac said quietly. The words held no anger, just the weight of truth. Pike nodded, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I did. God help me. I did." Martha turned in Isaac's arms to face the preacher. "And now? What will you do now, Reverend?" Pike looked at the bodies hanging from the trees, at Ward's crumpled form beneath the oak. He straightened his shoulders, seeming to age 10 years in a single moment. "What I should have done long ago," he said. "Bear witness to the truth." That night, as Isaac and Martha sat in the ruins of their forge, tending to each other's wounds by lamplight, Reverend Pike saddled his old mare. He packed a small bag with bread and a canteen of water. Without telling a soul in Redemption Creek, he rode out into the darkness, pushing his horse harder than he ever had before. He rode through the night, the stars his only companions. When his mare tired, he walked beside her, leading her by the reins. By dawn, his clothes were soaked with sweat, his legs burning with fatigue, but he kept moving. Just after noon the following day, he reached the federal outpost at Carter's Landing. Union soldiers watched with curiosity as the exhausted preacher stumbled into their camp, asking to speak with the commander. In the dusty office of Captain James Miller, Pike collapsed into a chair and confessed everything. The Klan's reign of terror in Redemption Creek, Deputy Harris's complicity, the attack on Isaac and Martha Tull, and the deaths that had followed. "I bear witness," Pike concluded, his voice hoarse from hours of testimony. "I was a coward, but I speak the truth now. The freedmen of Redemption Creek need protection. Deputy Harris must be arrested. And Isaac Tull." He paused, weighing his words carefully. Isaac Tull defended his life and the lives of innocent people when the law failed them. Captain Miller dispatched riders immediately, sending word to the federal marshal's office. 2 days later, A column of dust on the horizon announced the arrival of Federal Marshal John Donovan and his deputies. They rode into Redemption Creek with grim purpose, the afternoon sun glinting off their badges and the rifles slung across their saddles. Their first stop was the jail, where they found Deputy Harris hastily packing a saddlebag. He didn't resist when they clapped irons on his wrists, his face pale with fear. "Ward's dead," he babbled as they led him out. "The fat blacksmith killed them all. I had nothing to do with it." "Save it for the judge," Marshal Donovan said, pushing him toward a wagon. By late afternoon, the marshals had made their way to what remained of Isaac's forge. The building was half burned, but already Isaac had begun repairs, new timber framing rising from the ashes. Martha sat with Marshal Donovan on their small porch, while Isaac worked nearby, arm bandaged but hands busy. "My husband defended our lives," Martha said firmly, her posture straight, her gaze steady. "When we came to Redemption Creek after the war, we wanted only to live in peace, to work, to teach, to build something." She gestured toward the charred remnants of their home. "They wouldn't allow it. Ward and his men had been terrorizing freedmen for months," she continued, "burning schools, beating farmers who wouldn't leave their land, threatening colored children. When the law does nothing, when those sworn to protect instead persecute." She met Donovan's eyes without flinching. "A man must protect his own." Reverend Pike, who had returned with the marshals, stood nearby. His face was haggard from lack of sleep, but his voice was steady as he corroborated Martha's account. "Deputy Harris fed information to the Klan," Pike confirmed, "told them when colored families were most vulnerable, looked the other way when they rode. He swallowed hard. "I kept silent too long. But I swear on my soul, Isaac Tull acted to defend innocent lives when no one else would." Marshal Donovan nodded slowly, making notes in a small leather book. He looked up at Isaac, who had paused in his work to listen. "The federal government takes a dim view of vigilante justice, Mr. Tull," Donovan said carefully, "but it takes an even dimmer view of terrorist organizations like the Klan. Given the testimony we've gathered, and the lack of protection from local law enforcement," he closed his notebook. "Consider this matter closed." As the sun began to set, the marshals departed with Deputy Harris in tow. His protests faded into the distance as the wagon rolled away. Isaac sat heavily on the porch steps beside Martha, watching smoke curl from the newly rebuilt forge where he'd restarted the fire. His strong hands, covered in soot and bandages, rested on his knees. The evening was quiet except for distant bird song and the soft crackling of the forge fire. Martha's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "It's over," she whispered. Isaac gazed toward the horizon, where the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. For the first time in days, perhaps years, his face relaxed slightly, the weight of constant vigilance lifting from his shoulders. "Maybe now they'll let us live," he murmured, squeezing her hand gently. 1 week passed, then another. Spring settled fully over Redemption Creek, coating the hills in vibrant green and dotting the meadows with wildflowers. The town lay quiet, as though holding its breath, waiting to see what this new peace might bring. At Isaac's forge, the sounds of hammers rang out from dawn till dusk. Not just Isaac's hammer, but many. A chorus of metal striking metal. Freedmen from across the county had come to help rebuild what the Klan had tried to destroy. Even some white townsfolk joined in the effort, bringing lumber, nails, and food for the workers. Isaac directed the rebuilding with quiet authority. His injured shoulder had begun to heal, the bandages smaller now. He moved among the men, showing them how to set beams, lay bricks for a new chimney, and repair the damaged bellows. "Like this," he said softly to young Elijah, a 16-year-old freedman who watched him with awe. Isaac guided the boy's hands as they shaped a horseshoe. "Not too hard. Let the metal tell you when it's ready." Elijah nodded, his face serious with concentration. Yes, sir, Mr. Tull. Isaac had 3 such apprentices now, Elijah, Samuel, and Thomas, all sons of freedmen who wanted their boys to learn a trade. Isaac taught them patiently, sharing the skills that had kept him grounded through war and peace alike. At midday, Martha arrived with a basket of food. The schoolhouse had reopened, and she taught classes each morning. Now she spread blankets in the shade of a large oak near the forge, laying out bread, cheese, and jugs of cool water. "Come eat," she called, smiling at the men. "You can't work on empty stomachs." As they gathered around, Isaac noticed Reverend Pike approaching from town. The preacher walked slowly these days, as though carrying an invisible burden. His sermons had changed since that terrible morning. No more vague platitudes about patience and humility. Now he preached reconciliation, based on truth and justice. "Good day to you all," Pike said, stopping at the edge of their gathering. He still seemed uncertain of his welcome. "Join us, Reverend," Martha said, making space on her blanket. "There's plenty to share." Pike sat down gratefully. He broke bread with them and spoke quietly of changes coming to Redemption Creek. The federal marshals had left a small detachment behind to maintain order. 3 soldiers patrolled the town, ensuring that the peace held. "Deputy Harris will stand trial next month," Pike said. "Federal charges. They're bringing in witnesses from 3 counties." Isaac nodded but said nothing. He had no desire to discuss that time. When visitors came to thank him or call him brave, he simply redirected them to the work at hand. His rifle no longer traveled with him. It hung above the hearth in their small cabin, meticulously cleaned but permanently unloaded. After the meal, as the men returned to work, Isaac walked alone through the trees to the hanging oak. No ropes hung from its branches now. No bodies lay beneath it. Yet he felt its presence like a monument to all that had happened. He stood beneath its spreading canopy, listening to the wind rustle through new leaves. Death had visited here, called forth by his hand. He didn't regret what he'd done. Couldn't, when it had saved Martha, the children, and so many others who would have fallen to the clan's terror. But he carried the weight of it, nonetheless. "I thought I might find you here." Martha's voice came soft behind him. She joined him beneath the tree, her hand slipping into his. "The boys are doing well," she said. "Elijah has a gift for metalwork." Isaac nodded. "He does. You're giving them something valuable," she continued. "Not just the trade. You show them a man can be strong without cruelty, powerful without domination." Isaac squeezed her hand gently. "I want them to build, not destroy." They walked back together as afternoon shadows lengthened. The forge stood nearly complete now, its new roof gleaming in the sun. Men called greetings as they passed, respect evident in their voices. Later, as twilight settled over Redemption Creek, Isaac and Martha sat on their small porch. The cabin remained modest, but they'd begun adding a room for Martha's books and teaching materials. In time, they spoke of expanding the forge too, making space for more apprentices. Fireflies rose from the grass, blinking like earthbound stars. From inside came the soft glow of lamplight, illuminating the rifle above the mantel. Its stock bore the carved words that had once struck fear into Confederate hearts. "Deadeye Tull." Martha leaned her head against Isaac's shoulder, watching the fireflies dance. "You know what Thomas asked me today?" she said. "He wanted to know if it was true you shot the buttons off a Confederate officer's coat at 400 yards. Isaac chuckled softly. "Stories grow with telling." "They'll keep growing," Martha said. "The tales about what happened here." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the first evening stars. "They called you Fat Ike. They mocked what they didn't understand. They'll never forget who you really were." Isaac gazed out at the peaceful evening, at the rebuilt forge, at the community slowly healing around them. The weight he'd carried since the war felt lighter somehow. Not gone, but balanced by purpose. "The future matters more than legends," he said quietly. Martha smiled. "True. But legends have their place too. They remind us that justice can come from unexpected hands. As night deepened around them, laughter drifted from a nearby cabin, where some of the workers were sharing supper. Children's voices called goodnight. A dog barked in the distance, the ordinary sounds of life continuing. "I never wanted to be remembered for killing," Isaac said after a long silence. "You won't be," Martha assured him. "You'll be remembered for standing when others knelt, for protecting when others abandoned." She gestured toward the forge, solid and steady against the night sky. They came for a blacksmith. They left with a legend. I hope you found that story powerful. Leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. I have handpicked 2 stories for you that are even more powerful. Have a great day.